Hello, welcome to the Hussein and Brian podcast.
So today we're going to be talking about racism in society and economics, and we're going to be having a nice intellectual conversation and talking about how racism, it has a destructive reach in society and economics, and like
Yeah.
how it hurts people of color and low income people and stuff.
Yeah, so I always thought about it, and racism it stems back like thousands of years ago, and to see where it's come today, it's a really big change, but that change is still really effective to people of color and minority groups. Brian, what do you think is the big impact? What do you think the big impact racism has on both of these subjects?
So first, I want to talk about society. I want to talk about how racism affects people in society because that's the part I did my project on.
Yeah.
So I want to point out schools and like education. I think historically stuff like Jim Crow laws and segregated schools, they've hurt people of color, especially black people, because their schools are underfunded and they don't have access to like tutoring and like other services that are offered education. They're not they don't have great they don't have great reading or math skills because of the lack of funding they receive. And I think just like specifically in education, black people, they're not allowed, they have to work 3 times as harder just to get to the point that where white people are.
Yeah.
And I just think black people, they start off worse than white people because white people or other people with privilege,
they have that base already.
Yeah, they already have things set in stone for them. Like their family is probably already wealthy and they can afford the college education, private school education for them. So black people don't really have that.
Yeah. I'll speak on behalf of that. I feel like in my point of view of society, like racism and like how it plays in society and economics, I agree with what you're saying. Within society, it disrupts a lot of things. My project was specifically on economics, but also in society, because those two things, they play hand in hand. I feel like anywhere in the workplace, or if you're just working a job, if you're at school, like you were saying, it could really affect the people, or specifically people of color, because they've been going through it for how many years?
It's about a few centuries,
Yeah. But yeah, my project was on economics, and it was mainly focused in generational wealth, and how generational wealth, people of color, minority groups can't really gain that wealth because it's like a cycle. Racism keeps them at the bottom of that hierarchy kind of that our society has, and white people are at the pinnacle of that hierarchy. So it's kind of hard for them to climb unless they really work, like you said, 10 times harder, or a lot times harder to get to that place. But yeah, let's say for an example, let's say you see two resumes, and one has a predominantly white sounding name, and the other has a predominantly black sounding name, or a person of color. Studies shows that jobs are more likely to pick the white sounding name with the same type of resume than black people. And
I heard about that. Yeah,
and it shows a lot about how our society is now. And it, like I said, it plays hand in hand. Society and economics, they both play hand in hand, and this is an example of how both of them kind of paint that picture of how racism plays into those two subjects.
So I liked a lot of points you made, especially about the white sounding names and the black sounding names, and how white people are at the pinnacle of basically the wealth distribution in society. So has there been a specific time, maybe if on a job you worked that you faced some racial discrimination?
Yeah. A couple years back, I was working at CVS. And a white male came into the store, and I don't know. I have a red shirt on. He just didn't think I was working there. He thought I was, every stereotypical black person, and it really hurt because I don't really like my people being seen in that type of light. And it was just hard at that time, but I feel like it's very hard for everybody that goes through like things like that.
I see. Okay, I see. I'm sorry you went through that.
Yeah.
So like, how else, do you think, like, specifically, like what holds people, black people mainly from, like, advancing, like, in the workplace?
Yeah.
What do you say?
I feel like the main thing that holds people down from advancing in workplaces is, like I said, it's based off of like stereotypes and just like the color of your skin. Most people are like kind of prejudiced towards black people, and they use that prejudice and they take it like within anything. And I feel like specifically, like not just black people, but just like people of color. If they try to get a job, it's really hard, and if they are working a job, then it's hard to maintain that job because they're just looked at different.
I see. I'm really liking what you're saying there. I mean, I think I can relate to that, through my project. I think, to maybe shift it a little bit back towards racism in society. I think, the example you brought up with, you having red shirt on at CVS and then the guy like not liking you having the shirt. I think, it's a little bit, of microaggressions. Like,
Yeah.
white,
Definitely.
definitely like, some people, they always judge you for what you appear as, like they can judge you for anything. And I just think, maybe like, microaggressions, like maybe, a person talking to you in a certain kind of way compared to another person. And just like, it just goes to show like, the, subtle like effects of racism and how about like, white people or even like other, privileged quote unquote, racial groups, they kind of like just kind of disregard, people of color.
Yeah.
They don't.
Definitely.
They definitely don't. They definitely don't treat them the same. They don't give them the same leeway.
Yeah.
And also, to shit, it's actually shows in education too. I want to talk about education again. Like, some, maybe, some white teachers, they might kind of like be biased towards, white students, and then black students, they might see black students as, like, oh, maybe he's not gonna go this far to do this project. And then for the white student, he's gonna be like, oh no, he got it, he's not gonna.
I've seen that before.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's definitely like, has to also do with, like discipline. I say like,
but like I feel like, what do you think that we should do to like kind of minimize these problems in like society or in economics? I can talk about What do you think?
I'd say definitely, I've been thinking about it for a while. I think we should, personally, I think I should perform like, a panel, in front of like a small group, maybe in my school, to spread the word about racism and, how, specifically affects people within society and economics.
Yeah.
To give, some insight into this panel, I think it's just like a source of like quick information for people that they don't really, they hear about racism, but they don't really, see like,
or get any interactions or like experience with like racist like comments or anything that has to do with that law. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then like a goal of the panel would just be to talk about racism, get people's own takes on racism, like, and I would want to see if people have had like any like personal experiences with racism and like how that's like influenced them and how they've gone about their way and like just going about life in general.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure like everybody's able to learn from the experience and like take some small action against racism.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree with do something like that. If you're tuning in, this is the end of our podcast. If you enjoyed it, then follow
us.
More.
You can come back for more. We're always here to talk about racism. So if you have any ideas, you just go in the comment section and just drop anything you like.
Yep.